Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Matters. We're coming to you on Channel 9 and on WJOPLP Newburyport FM 96.3 with a new episode on the second Saturday of every month. Each month on Spirit Matters, we'll respond to listener-submitted questions or focus our discussion on a special topic. We'll also provide stories of positive change or inspiration. Some weeks we'll have guest respondents as well, as we do this week, to reflect upon a special topic that is sadly all too timely: gun violence, the emotions it leaves in its wake, and its connection to spiritual issues. We'll introduce you later on to our special guest, Ann Haaser, who works with Moms Demand Action, and we'll have her on in just a moment. I'm your co-host, Mary Jacobsen, and let me give a hearty welcome to my co-host, Reverend Rebecca Bryan. Good morning, Reverend Rebecca.
Good morning, Mary. How are you this month?
I am very well. I'm happy to report. Well, as we are accustomed to doing, we're going to circle back for a minute to last month's show, which was focused on poetry. And Reverend Rebecca, you had a closing quote from Mary Oliver: "Joy is not made to be a crumb." And so, as we usually do, we both reflect upon it over the course of the month. And I confess that my reflection upon it wasn't until yesterday, but in a case of real synchronicity, I found the perfect frame for this. I was reading Thich Nhat Hanh's, I'm never sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but I think that's it, the Vietnamese monk's book, The Heart of Buddhist Teaching. And I came across what for me is the perfect lens to put around that quotation. And it went like this: even while you have pain in your heart, you can enjoy the many wonders of life. The beautiful sunset, the smile of a child, the many flowers and trees. If you dwell only in your suffering, you will miss paradise. Well, in other words, you know, if we choose to focus on it, there's an ocean of suffering everywhere in life. We take turns diving into the ocean of suffering, but joy is as close for all of us as a flower or the sunset. And when we choose to focus on it, it becomes a portal, a doorway to paradise, which is indeed no crumb. So it felt like a perfect synchronicity for me coming across that quotation. Kind of sums it up. How about you, Reverend Rebecca?
Oh, that's just beautiful. Thank you, Mary. Yes. And, you know, when I think about it, to me, it's the moments of joy and compassion and love, but it's the moments when my heart rejuvenates, when it wakes up, that allows me to do everything else that I do. And I wouldn't want to do it otherwise. I always say we're contagious as people, not just in our viruses, but in our attitudes and our, we can do work for justice with love and joy in our heart. And I believe that it not only will lend itself to a better ultimate result, but that everyone we're in relationship with is thus positively, touched by it. And so if I don't have places and moments of joy every day, which for me generally are in the most particular things, they're not in the largest sort of grand, it's, Monday mornings I volunteer at a horse rescue farm, and it's petting the neck of that horse as the winter coat is coming off, and tears are in my eyes of just joy. If I don't have those moments, I'll become bitter, tired. I'm not helpful. I'm not as helpful. So yeah.
I like the verb you choose: to rejuvenate your heart with joy.
Yes.
Yes. And I think it's perhaps a skill or a choice to, as you've done, to make a study of your life for where those moments of joy come from, and then make darn sure that they're built in every day.
That's right. And watch for them, right? Be open to them. Be delighted by things you could never imagine. So.
A doorway to paradise.
That's right.
That's right. Well, thanks very much for that. So this month on Spirit Matters, we're going to explore the relationship between spirituality and engagement with the issues of the world and justice, specifically gun violence in Massachusetts. And now, therefore, it's my pleasure to welcome Ann Haaser. Ann, welcome, and thank you so much for visiting the morning show.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Reverend Rebecca.
Hi, Ann.
It's so good to be here, and thank you for asking me to be here to share about two things that are so important in my life that I don't often get a chance to talk about together. Is advocacy and spirituality. So thank you for asking me.
Well,
Thank you for
thank you.
being here.
Absolutely. Well, let's dig into our special topic then. And I'd like to start, would you please share a little bit about your story? What is your faith? And if you're comfortable sharing a little bit about it, and how did you come to be involved with the issue of gun violence and efforts to expand gun safety? And how does your work in this area impact your own spirituality?
There's a lot there. So I'll start out with the first question, which is my faith. I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church and throughout my life, and I was an off and on practicing Catholic till about 12 years ago. And then I realized that there were things going on in the church that didn't correspond to my values. And it just wasn't the experience wasn't what I was seeking spiritually. So I did some church shopping and I ended up going back repeatedly week after week to First Religious Society, Unitarian Universalist. So I am a member of that church now. So I am a UU. I became involved with gun violence prevention in a serious way after Sandy Hook. I had always been troubled by gun violence in our country, but never really had anything I could do about it. But after the tragedy at Sandy Hook in December of 2012, a woman in Indiana, a mother of 5, her name is Shannon Watts, she started a Facebook page because she was just feeling as outraged and devastated and helpless as many of us were, most of us were. So she started a Facebook page, and within a couple of days, she had, close to 10,000, I think, followers. So that Facebook page turned into what is now today Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And the thing that she did that nobody previously had been able to do was to engage people like me as a volunteer to do some actual work. At that time, the work was getting other people engaged with the organization. So now we have nearly 6 million supporters around the country, a chapter in every state. There are 350,000, I think, volunteers at, some people give 5 minutes a week, some people give 40 hours a week, and everything in between. So that's how I got involved with being so active in the issue. And it impacts my spirituality because I think that most people that are involved in working on this issue at some level do it from a spiritual foundation because it's so reflective of what I consider to be spiritual values. So the value of seeing the inherent worth and value and dignity in every human being is to me a spiritual value. The desire to prevent human suffering is a spiritual value. And understanding that every life in every community is really as important as your life in your community is the love thy neighbor as thyself spiritual value. So, and beyond that, wanting to live in a world where people don't feel the need or feel compelled to arm themselves against each other is a spiritual value to me. And that also draws me to the work.
Yeah. Reverend Rebecca, did you want to reply to what Ann has been talking about?
Sure. Well, I know Anne well, and I know Anne as a person of faith and a
Mhm.
person deeply engaged and committed with this work. And I have such admiration for that. To me, it's what it's about, what it's all about. I learn so much from you, Anne, from both the specifics of the work you're involved in, which is very important. And I want to make sure we talk about more, and also the way you live in an integrated way, that you are the same person everywhere you are, and you're putting our values and the spiritual values you hold dear into action. And so I just find that to be so important. And I guess the question that I would have for you is, and this one is a big question, but I think some of our listeners may wonder this sort of a thing, why, for in your experience, what does being a part of a faith community or a spiritual community or religious, whatever words you use, why does that matter as a part of this? Could you do it on your own? Could you, how do you find that it helps or hinders? Or I'm just curious about that.
That's really an interesting question, and one that
I didn't give you a heads up either.
I do think I mean, it's hard to imagine, but I like to think if I weren't a member of a formalized spiritual community, that I would still be doing the work.
Mhm.
And I think there are many people who do.
Mhm.
I do feel that I do a lot of work, especially recently, with survivors of gun violence. So people who have either survived an act of gun violence against themselves,
Mhm.
or have had someone that they love deeply taken from them.
Yes.
And I can say that the thing that amazes me most are the strength that these people have and the resilience just to even put their feet on the floor and get up in the morning and live each day.
Yes.
And oftentimes, now I'm not talking about myself so much, but oftentimes that they're able to do that because of their connection with a spiritual, faith-based
Mhm.
organization.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so it is, I think, important for me as well to be among people that have shared values.
Mhm.
Those values that I just spoke of
Mhm.
are shared by the people in my faith community.
Mhm.
That gives me strength to go on with the work too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm struck, and when you were talking earlier about the values that you highlight, I would put it as there's a sanctity to life, and there's a sanctity to all human life, and that part of your investment in this mission, in this goal for our society, for our culture, really is to try and establish that basic value, so that it's also expressed in the laws that we have around gun safety. Because the laws that we have, they don't currently, in my assessment, don't have any common sense to them, and they don't reflect the values that you were talking about, a basic sense that there is a sanctity to human life, and that is top priority. But what you paired that with when you were talking was this sense that somehow um, there is fear or negativity, or a sense that some lives are not as valuable as other lives, that leads people to fear, to want or need, or to assert the dominance, the superseding value of their right to have guns anywhere, anytime, on demand, of any kind and every kind. And so when you talk about a vision of a more peaceable kind of society and nation, where people somehow are able to feel secure enough or compassionate enough, or some of us might say sane enough, to be able to place that kind of value at the top of their hierarchy of what we need to enact in order to have a sane and a peaceful nation. So I really was drawn to what you were saying. And these are, I think I would call them spiritual values and spiritual needs as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you know, just to follow up on what you're saying and the point that you're making is, you know, there are all different types of gun violence, and there are all different types of ways that people can be killed by guns, and whether it's a mother of, and I say mother, but it could be a father, an uncle, or anybody that's capable of loving another human being. But I'll use the word mother, whether it's a mother that has lost her child to a gun suicide.
Yeah.
And I just have to mention, I have two sons, and both of them know young men who have taken their lives with a gun. Whether it's those mothers or a mother who I have known mothers whose children have been killed by a friend who gained access to an unsecured loaded gun, and in playing with it, you know, shot and killed their child. Or a mother in Boston whose child is taken by a gun homicide. All of that unimaginable grief and suffering is the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. And as a society, to not want to lessen that grief and suffering is something that is, it's hard for me to understand, and it's hard for me to live with, because these deaths are preventable. For the most part, these deaths are preventable. And so for us, you know, knowing that we all value life at some level, that we wouldn't work harder to save these lives is, so that's why I do what I do. And that's why so many of us, as illustrated by the numbers that I gave, do what we do.
Those numbers are impressive. Absolutely, Ann. They really are. And I think any kind of death, but especially an unexpected and unnecessarily gun death, just leaves a black hole in somebody's family and in their hearts. So,
Yeah, and you know, that is true. This issue is different in a way. I don't think anybody would argue against cancer research.
Right.
Lives, you know, which are devastating when lives are lost to cancer. But to argue against saving lives that are taken by gun violence, to me, makes no sense.
Well, you know, you've been talking some about the emotions associated with gun violence, and I'd like to ask both you and Reverend Rebecca, how do you hold yourself the heavy emotions that are related to these issues?
Ann, please.
Okay. Well, it helps to work with a group of people who are advocating for the same thing that you are. You know, I was thinking, because there are various incidents that happen in the country that are just so really appalling, that a lot of people gather around the issue at that point in time, because people don't want to live in fear of gun violence. So, you know, and they want to make their voice heard. But people do tend to move on to the lives that they live. And what happens is that you have a group of people who stay, and those are the people that you lean on, and they lean on you, and you support each other in the work, because you come from that common place of, you know, realizing that if you give up and move on, then nothing's going to change. It's kind of like be the change that you want to see in the world. So that it helps to work with an organization that's full of people like that. But I also do every day start my day with prayer and meditation when I can. I'm not very good at the meditation part. I have a mind that wanders a lot, but that's important for me to establish a quiet time at the beginning of the day. And as I listen to Reverend Rebecca talk about the joy that you find in a day, there has to be some of that, right?
Yeah.
Because this is a tough issue and it's a heavy issue.
It is.
The thing that, in addition to just the heaviness of the issue because of the grief it involves, some of the heaviness comes from people who agree that something needs to be done, but have almost given up anything happening. A lot of this work is unseen, certainly unglamorous. I have a data problem that I need to work on later today. That's not the glamorous side.
Yeah, no.
So things are changing, even though it may not be apparent to people. And people that say nothing will ever change or add to the heaviness of the topic. So that, so again, in our organization, we just say, keep going, keep going. So much like you were doing a reading that you brought to this discussion today, I knew I was going to be here today talking about this, and I was finishing up a book I've been reading by Mary Ann Williamson called Everyday Grace. So I have a quote, which I think really helps for me to put this question into focus. What more is an ideal than a thought that has not yet descended from heaven to earth? A thought that awaits the evolution of the human race to be accepted and made manifest. Realism is not particularly helpful when what is real is so painful to witness. So idealism versus realism. I have to I have to believe in the idealism that this is going to change, and it may not change during my lifetime in the degree that I'd like to see, but it.
That's a wonderful reading. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I also take from what you're saying that I don't remember who said hope is a muscle, but it's something clearly that you work at and maintain, and it's part of what keeps you strong. And thank you for that, because we need you and people like you working on this onward, in other words. Reverend Rebecca, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Sure. Well, and Ann touched upon probably the same things. I may say it a little differently. I do want to say, though, the quote, what a great quote, Ann. And I've heard that described by folks as moral imagination, right? That we need that moral imagination, which is creative and hopeful and linked to our values, coming. So I think for me, what allows me, I guess I'd say a few things about to hold the heaviness. Part of it is to have those actual skills to process difficult emotions. It's not something I wasn't taught, certainly. And I do believe that knowing how to feel is an essential spiritual and practical skill these days. And if we don't feel, first of all, we'll be cut off from our passions, and we have to do a lot of very detrimental things to not feel. So having the ability to know that an emotion can run through me and it will end, it will come again, but that I can allow it to move and stay in my heart and stay in my body. And then it's that, for me, that both and of my deep and abiding faith in how I understand God to be, which is prayer and meditation all the time, and a right-sized view of myself, and doing what I can, so that when I go to bed at night, I've done something that I can't. It's not going to solve the problems, but if we all do what we can, I do believe. What other option is there? I mean, there are other options. However, rather than being overwhelmed and overcome and then sort of giving up, I recognize that I am limited, and yet I have the power and gifts I do, and to choose to use them to the best way I can. So it's both. It's both.
Yeah. Well, these are all wonderful reflections, and you've both been very eloquent on the topic, and I appreciate that. On a practical end, though, I understand, Anne, that there are some things happening locally that people could involve with. There's something I think I heard about a walk coming up. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, it's happening locally in support of an organization that's in Boston, in Dorchester, actually. So there's an organization called the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute in Dorchester. And what I have found in, the so many different ways that people bring their solutions to violence in general and gun violence in particular. So a lot of the community-led organizations that are working towards solutions to violence do have spiritual components that are more, discussed and evident than when you're, for example, doing legislative advocacy. So the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute is a place of healing for families that have been impacted by violence, and for the community that has been impacted by violence. And they have become a model for other organizations that are trying to or have been established in other cities in our state and in the country, actually. So every year, the Peace Institute has their main fundraiser, which is a walk for peace on Mother's Day. And last year, of course, it was virtual. This year, it's virtual. But there are some components of it that we can, in an appropriately socially distanced way, come together for. Our church has a walk team, but we're opening it up to anybody in the community that wants to join the walk team. Again, it's a fundraising event, so we're trying to support the services that the Institute offers. We are having a raffle for a chamber gift card and a Richard Jones painting on a canvas bag, which is an antique kind of painting, which includes our church on it. So it's a nice gift, and raffle tickets will be sold for $10 every Sunday in front of our church. I believe it's from 12 to 1 or 12 to 2. I should know this, and I don't.
It's okay.
And also the day before Mother's Day, so we're not doing a physical walk on Mother's Day, but the day before Mother's Day, we're going to gather in front of our church. We're going to have coffee and cider donuts for a small donation. You can partake. And we're going to gather and then kind of go out for walks around the community as we choose.
Wonderful.
The young church, for example, is going to walk through the downtown area, leaving tokens, little wooden tokens of love for people and in places. And so we'd love for the community to become engaged in this with us. It's also, I know people are really engaged with the anti-racism movement over the last year. And this is a way to support a community that's been the victim of systemic racism for a very, very long time. So I think if people who are listening want to become part of this, they could email maybe our church administrator. Would that be?
Sure. Yes, they could do, info@frsuu.org is the most simple email to remember. And that will get to me, and I can get it to Ann. And yes, it's a community-wide event. It just happens to be organized for one of our parishioners, but this is for the whole community.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for telling us about that, Ann. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for people to feel effectual on more than one issue, both, as you were saying, racism as well as anti-gun violence. So thank you very much for that. We just have a few minutes left for today, I see. And Reverend Rebecca, I do have one positive story, but let's get your quotation in first.
Absolutely. I did love Ann's quotation. And
yeah, me too.
This is a quotation as well, I'll add, that I would, I'm just reading the whole thing. That I would encourage all of us to think about. And it's actually by Jimmy Carter. And he says, if you're a moderate on gun control, or if you're a moderate in your religious faith, if you're a moderate on gun control, it doesn't evolve into a crusade where you're either right or wrong, good or bad, with us or against us. So my question to all of us is, what is our crusade? What is it that we are? They'll say in climate action, what is it you're willing to die for? But the point being, what is it that you don't stay silent about, and that you don't remain moderate in your actions and sharing of your opinions? But what is it that you put your heart and your passion behind?
That is a great question. I love that. I see that we just have a couple of minutes left now, and I want to thank Ann for being our very special guest. I really appreciate your taking the time to share your wisdom and your heart and your spirituality with us. Thank you so much for that. So that's it for today, everybody. Think about what your crusade is. I'll certainly be thinking about that. That's a wonderful question. Please join us for our next new episode on the second Saturday of May. That will be May 8th. Your questions and suggestions for discussion topics are very welcome to be included. Please email them to spiritmattersnewburyport@gmail.com. Your name will be kept confidential if you prefer, of course. After broadcast, Spirit Matters will replay on Channel 8 at 1 p.m. on Mondays, and again on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. It'll also be available at Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at www.ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon and look for the playlist for Spirit Matters. You'll also find it on the SoundCloud. Go to ncmhub.org and click on the sound icon, and then scroll down until you find it. That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next month on Spirit Matters.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Thanks, Mary.